So second session of the day is from Bengaluru chapter. We have Achala Bhatt, who is a talent development professional, a keynote speaker with a leading MNC. She is going to speak on learning agility, conquering uncertainty. So she has been actively speaking in the community. Before I welcome her, let me thanks our founding sponsor, Innovation Roots. Innovation Roots is a leading consulting and training service helping organizations to achieve business agility and beyond. It is one of the leaders and pioneers of niche publishing services and well known for content collaboration with global thought leaders, authors, and creators. For more information, I request you to visit www.innovationroots.com. Quick do's and don'ts. Join the event 5 minutes before the start time. Use high quality speakers and headphones for better sound quality. Please keep your microphones muted and video disabled, as this may cause disturbance and bandwidth issue. Questions will be taken via chat box. Facilitator or moderator will help and read out the questions to the speakers as per the time availability. Please fill the feedback form after the event to help us understand more about the event management. We appreciate your cooperation. With this, I would like to welcome Achala on behalf of the community. Welcome, Achala. Over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much thank you so much for this opportunity, Agile Network India. And the reason I thought of speaking about learning agility and this opportunity to speak about Agile world in particular is because we truly are thriving in an agile world these days. So from a perspective of a talent development professional, from a perspective of an organization, and also how all of you all as agile professionals can work along with us talent development professionals to create a more agile world is what I'll be sharing in the session today. One disclaimer is, and I'll share the story about it much later, I'm using a detached webcam and it happens to be seated with a little distance in front of me. Not much habituated into looking into a detached camera. So it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about that detached camera if you think that I'm looking elsewhere. But I assure you that I am looking into this session. And with that, I'll share my screen. Okay. So learning agility, when I first got acquainted with this concept, my tenure as an HR professional spans across 3 roles, as a business partner HR, as a talent development professional, and also as a learning and development professional. I've helped the workplaces that I've worked with any kind of talent interventions, career frameworks, or learning interventions that they would have required for their respective workforces. And I was newly introduced to this concept much earlier in 2017, but after pandemic, this has picked up speed very rapidly because we suddenly got a shocker that times can change like this, and to what extent, like it happened in pandemic. So to give a textbook definition of learning agility refers to how quickly you can adapt to changing circumstances, how much can you use your own past experiences or expertise in order to make a difference. Irrespective of the degree that you hold, irrespective of the work experience that you bring in, how quick are you in implementing those changes? How quickly can you bring in agility amongst the people around you, and different facets of learning agility? So in short, it's more about how quick that you can be. And with that, the very important question, why learning agility? To break a very popular myth, maybe you will say, I have worked across different organizations, so hey, maybe I'm agile. I have XYZ years of experiences, so hey, maybe I'm agile because I've worked across different projects. But there are some reflective questions I'll anyway be sharing later in the presentation. Some reflective questions that you may want to ask yourself is, has the set of projects in your long work experience been with the same kind of industry, been in the same organization, maybe with the same boss? with the same kind of people, people with similar educational backgrounds and so on? That's a question you need to ask yourself to measure the learning agility and to what extent you do have that learning agility. And across all the assessments created across industries, very sadly, only 15% of the workforces have been found to be truly agile. And when I say a learning agility, it has its own components of 5 different types. Even amongst those 5 types pulled together, the ratio of people who are actually found to be learning agile has come only to a very sad percentage of 15%. Now, do you fall in that 15%? How can you fall into that 15% and actually pull it up onwards is all that we will be covering through this session. So before that, a very quick activity, and with that, I'm changing my screen and presenting something. All you need to do is either open another tab on your laptop or in your smartphone. What does continuous learning mean for you? So in the another tab or on your smartphone, you'll be typing www.menti.com and using that code that you're seeing. So what does continuous learning mean for you? I would love to hear your thoughts. And don't worry, I'll not get to see who typed what. I'll just see the responses, so don't worry. Okay, I hope everyone's able. Okay, improving mistakes. We have the very first response. Okay, improving on mistakes. So learning from your mistakes, whatever. It's never about failures, or it's never about losses. It's about converting those losses into gain. Is what improving mistakes stands for. Continuously improving. Absolutely. Any other thoughts? I'll wait for a few more responses so that keep innovating. Yes, thanks for sharing that, Priyank. Luckily, I can see the chat box responses, but it would be great if you can put it here for everyone's perusal also. Okay. If, yes, okay. Adoption for change. How can you adapt to changing times, changing people? That's also continuous learning. Absolutely right. Keeping yourself updated. Absolutely. These are changing times, and in fact, the tool that you're seeing right now, that's Mentimeter, it's something I learned a couple of weeks ago. I think a couple of weeks ago is when I took a KT from someone at my workplace, and they taught me how to use this. So continuously keeping yourself updated. My mother knows how to use Zoom now. She had absolutely no clue about it until a year back, but she's a pro in Zoom now. Be relevant, and that's what you do by adopting yourself for change. That's what my mom is doing, being relevant. She comes from a different generation altogether. She's 50 plus years of age, but she can absolutely flawlessly use Zoom. Zoom is user-friendly. Thanks for sharing, Amar, but I would still like to credit that to my mother's thirst for learning. Brilliant. Thank you for sharing your responses. And I'm flipping back to the earlier presentation that we were on. And with that, busting a very important myth. Learning ability is not equal to learning agility. And we are absolutely not going to talk about learning ability. I'll dive deeper into what learning ability is and what learning agility is. Learning ability is usually something that's hardwired, and we all rate ourselves in terms of learning ability. If I were to ask all of you, what do you think your learning ability is? Possibly on a scale of 10, you will be able to rate yourself, and that can be possibly static, or it could also roughly be worked upon if you will to. But learning agility is something which will need to be constantly worked upon, and it's something we are not born with. You have to leverage the people around you, you have to leverage the situations around you to bring that change into effect. It's not something which is inherent, it's not something static. There could be an instance where your learning agility is not getting amplified more if you're not in the right circumstances, not in the right team or a project, we'll see that subsequently. But learning agility, learning ability will not take a hit and is not very much dependent on the circumstances around you. And if you were to ask me the very relevant question, hey, we got the difference. Can you tell me what is more important, learning ability or learning agility? I would blindly pick learning agility, because if you have learning agility, you can very well develop learning ability. So it's learning agility greater than learning ability always. Now, types of learning agility, there are 5 types. Yes, even I was quite shocked and flabbergasted when firstly, learning agility was a very new concept that we were all diving deeper into. And then while I see that it has 5 types. The researchers on learning agility have started ever since 2008, but the amount of changes that have happened ever since 2000, in the last 10 years for that matter. And to give a very rough example, so I have a younger sister who's just 6 years younger to me. And when I was studying, when I was doing my graduation, there was no WhatsApp. We have all exchanged notes physically. We have copied from journals physically. But it's not too long back, it's not too much of difference, but when my sister was doing her graduation, it was all WhatsApp groups. People are sharing, the kind of sharing over WhatsApp group that all of us are already aware of. And what's amplified more is even we see even our parents or even people from their generation having their own WhatsApp groups and having that exchange of information. And I'm not even talking of say 20, 30 years. It's merely just those 3, 4, 5 years where this changes have been very rapid. And it's not just changing technology or the environment that we have been in. People around us have also changed. People have either become more tech or digital savvy or less digital savvy or tech savvy, depending on which industry you operate in, depending on the kind of people that you interact with. And so 5 different types, and we will shortly see on how you can also build all these types of learning agilities. But just giving one sentence gist into each of these, because all of them also do have overlaps. The first one, change agility. I think all of us, without knowing where you work at, without knowing the teams that you belong to, I can, hands on my heart, I can say that all of us have exhibited extremely good change agility in the last 2 years. We have transitioned from working at workplaces to working from home. This entire conference is happening virtually. The amount of change agility is your response to changing circumstances. How quickly you can adopt, how quickly your organizations can adapt to these changes is change agility. The second aspect, mental agility. Now, in any project or any undertaking that you might have, there are different ways to arrive at the solutioning. Some of us are very logical, some of us use the mathematical models to arrive at the conclusions, but it could also be a different way of solving something, and that is known as mental agility. Can you think out of the box? Can you brainstorm different ideas? Your resilience or your agility or your response to different kind of ideas and bringing them to fruition is mental agility. The third one, people agility, goes without saying. Can you work with people from diverse backgrounds? Can you work with people from diverse set of groups? And just to give a very simple example over here, this I largely have, my work experience largely lies in working with IT professionals or from tech consulting background until I moved into my current organization. So my current organization, I interact with a lot of commerce specialists, a lot of chartered accountants, people who come with that strong accounting or that risk background. It was very contrary to what my earlier experience was and the kind of conversations that I used to have with people. So can you bring in that people agility? If everyone around you, if everyone in your team were to change tomorrow, can you still adapt? Can you still succeed as a team? Can you still work with them? That's your people agility. Results agility, for those of you who create these action items for the day and keep ticking that, and work towards taking them out. That's known as results agility. Someday, if that list of action items that you have done, if it falls apart, can you still stick to the results agility? Can you still bring in those results? Tomorrow, if I'm assuming if you're using Google Keep Notes, tomorrow if Google decides to go off market, can you still work towards your results in the same way? Do you adopt different ways to work towards those results? That's results agility. Self-awareness, I'm sure, self-explanatory. How aware are you of your strengths? Like I was saying previously, if I were to ask you how much do you rate yourself on basis of learning ability, can you rate yourself? That's the very first question. Are you really honest and aware in terms of where your learning ability lies, or for that matter, anything? If I were to ask your expertise in the field of work that you work as a Scrum Master, how much would you rate yourself, and so on? That's self-awareness. This is very crucial because it's through self-awareness, it's the base of all the types of the agility that you're seeing. Through self-awareness, you can work towards building the less types of agility. You'll be honest with yourself on where you could improve or could work better on and work towards it. So self-awareness is the base of all of this. Now, we know the types of learning agilities here. Can we bring in these agilities in ourselves? Can we also become an agile learner? And that's what we are going to see in the next few slides. How can we bring in learning agility on each of these types? Now, possibly when you were listening to me, when I was speaking of all these types of learning agilities, I'm sure some thoughts came in your mind as to, hey, I'm good at this, hey, I could do better at this, and so on. So some more reflective questions is what we will subsequently see now. Embrace the unfamiliar, and goes without saying, very obvious, this is very essential for you to build change agility in particular. And I'll share one industry example, and it's a very famous industry example. You will find detailed accounts of it online also as to how these companies went through it. It's of Google and Procter Gamble, where they had done swapping the job roles experiment. Say tomorrow I'll play the role of a Scrum Master and you'll play my role of a talent development professional. An extreme example, but somewhere on those lines. Can we swap roles and work in different roles? Now, the immediate thought that comes to my mind is, hey, I've been doing this for a lot of years. Hey, I have the degree in this particular field. How can you do that work for me? And the answer to that is sometimes, if we have been in the same line of work for a long time, if we have been working for some time in the same roles, there could be blind spots that could develop, and that's what Google and Procter and Gamble were trying to eliminate by bringing that exercise, and it was super successful for them. And the good news is this was done somewhere around 2008 to 2010, when the concept of learning agility possibly wasn't even as much researched on. It was super successful for them. They could bring in a lot of ideas, which in turn led to a lot of impact and turnaround, and created that long-lasting impact for these two companies. I'll also share a personal example. I think after my MBA, I was posted in this. I would like to refrain from calling the name of the place, possibly if you have memories attached to that place. I was posted in a place where I did not know the culture of that place. I did not know the language spoken in that place. And at least for a diameter of 60 to 70 kilometers, I had no known people, like, people who could call my own, or people I could call if I was in crisis. And I was just left all alone in that place. And for a week or two, I used to absolutely complain about it. I wanted to be in a familiar place, like possibly Bangalore, where I belong. Even if I'm posted in a different area of Bangalore, it's still my city. I know the culture, I know the language, I know the people, but I was posted in a very, very different city at that point of time. For the first 1 or 2 weeks, I had that resistance, but I had to upbring or uplift my change agility perspective and try to mix with the people around, adapt to that change, look at the good points of that place also. And that place did have a lot of good to offer. It was technically a village where there was 0% traffic. There was no Ola, Uber, so absolutely 0% traffic over there. Pollution was also 0% because, hey, it's a village, and so on. So embrace the unfamiliar. How quickly can you embrace the unfamiliar decides your change agility. So the next time you fall into a situation like the one I was fallen into, or maybe a little lesser, it is only adding to your change agility, and it will only help you with building that growth mindset that you want to. Having a mentor and seeking feedback, as simple as it sounds, it could be sometimes challenging to get feedback and act upon it. And I'm saying this from a personal example very much. Firstly, the line that you're seeing at the bottom, that's reflect, inquire, suggest, and elevate, that's nothing but RISE model of feedback. Even if you Google it, you'll see it, RISE, RISE model of feedback. And that's one of the established model that can be used to give feedback. So if you want to make a note of it, please feel free to do so, and you will also get images of it and detailed explanations of it online. So it's RISE model of feedback. So you may ask, why actually have a mentor and seek feedback? And I would rate this in the top 2 things that you should be doing for your career to flourish. Absolutely, because a mentor is someone who's not your close friend. A mentor is someone who's not blinded to possibly the blind spots that you have, or the mindset glitches that you might have. A mentor is someone who's very much honest with you, who will act as that milestone that you see on the road which says, say, Mumbai 400 kilometers and so on. A mentor is someone who acts as a milestone. I'll share a personal story here, and even I learned it the harder way. This is in one of my previous roles. On one pleasant day, I was given a very harsh feedback on the work that I had done, and I was in the food court and I was crying, or at least some people noticed I was crying. And one of my mentors comes in coincidentally at the same time, and I explained it to her that, hey, I did this work and I felt it was good, but the others didn't like it, and I got a harsh feedback, blah blah. And she told me just one dialogue, which I have actually written in bold letters on a poster and stuck in my room. The only sentence she said was, Achla, take your ego, crumple into a paper, and throw it into the dustbin. And whenever I get that resistance to feedback, that's what I tell myself. Seeking feedback, and again, as you can imagine, when she said that, my instant reaction was, what? But as I reflected upon it for the next 5 to 10 minutes, it actually gave a very clear view of how differently I was viewing that situation. That one sentence had such an immense impact. So always have a mentor, seek feedback from them, and possibly, even if you are acting as a mentor to someone, if you wish to follow a model for giving feedback, RISE model is something that I would highly recommend. Building self-awareness goes without saying, which it will add to your self-awareness aspect of people agility, of your learning agility. And there are multiple ways to bring self-awareness, and very crucial, like I was saying, self-awareness forms the baseline of all the different types of learning agility facets that you have. So how can you build self-awareness? Journaling, mindfulness, how and why, these reflective questions. And the last one, how and why, is exactly what I did when my mentor told me to crumple my ego and throw into dustbin. My first question was, why, rather, as to why do you think that I had to crumple out my ego? Firstly, why do you think I had an ego, especially when I'm emotional and when I'm crying because of a harsh feedback? Why? And that's when it gives you that reflective question. And how can you act upon it is the next question you should be asking yourself. Journaling, I wouldn't dive deeper into both these aspects because we have heard about them enough number of times, but specifically on journaling, and it's not about something that you would always require a framework for. Even if you were to just journal about your day, the work that you did, and possibly where could you get better, or even if you did excellent, why do you think it was excellent? Why do you think it was long lasting? have a journal and account of these reflective thoughts, and it will build a great amount of self-awareness. And if you haven't started on it, absolutely no qualms. Even I started just 3-4 years back at a very grand old age. And what you can do is just journal for the next 20 days, and you will get addicted to it. You will love the process, I can assure you that. So start with small steps and you will eventually fall in love with it. Building emotional intelligence, again, a very new concept that has come in, emotional intelligence. And one person who's really worked very heavily on emotional intelligence is Daniel Goleman. Daniel Goleman, he's the author of the book. Also, if you can find this book, Primal Leadership, please do go for it. It speaks of emotional intelligence. It speaks of the kind of leadership traits that you need to bring in to become an emotionally intelligent leader. And especially after the pandemic, again, this trait has risen in its value, because there were a lot of instances, and there will be a lot of instances in future also, where you may not really see the person face to face. We work with people across geographies. We will possibly never hypothetically be able to meet them in person, even if things were to get back to normal, because that's the nature of your work. You support possibly that project from here and they support it from another geography. But having that emotional intelligence and understanding their point of view still, without having without going on chai breaks with them, or without having the opportunity to meet them, can you still build emotional intelligence? If you're a project manager, if you're in a team lead role, it becomes even more important for you to build an emotional intelligence, because that's how you'll read the room with the team. That's how you will understand the pulses of the team, and things will be unsaid. It's your responsibility as a team lead to understand anything that's unsaid. Understand if there's something that's playing on top of your mind of someone in your team. So there are multiple pillars again in emotional intelligence. I've picked the top ones. Empathy, social awareness. It's different from self-awareness. Can you read the room? Which I was saying, can you read the room? Can you understand the pulse of your teams? That's social awareness. Self-motivation, and I did notice a question that came in on self-motivation, and I'll touch upon it when I'm answering that question in detail. But motivational drivers are something that we all can tap in more on. Can you bring in that self-motivation, especially as a leader? Sometimes you are all alone in that boat as a captain of the ship, and how can you bring in that self-motivation to take that sinking ship ahead is what will be a very huge determining factor. Peer learning, very obviously this will add to your people agility part of it. How open are you to learn from others? How much collaboration are you bringing into projects? In projects where you're working with multiple people, how much are you learning from them? So the way to build social peer learning, or the way to amplify peer learning at your workplaces, is social jams, sharing, and collaborative projects. So what I imply by sharing, I know the other terms are self-explanatory. Sharing is when, if you're good at something, share it with everyone else. Because there is a very good chance you may get some of the opposing views. There's a very good chance you may even get supporting views. But sharing is what amplifies peer learning and also your learning in the first place. And which right now, in fact, is what I'm doing. I'm sharing what I know with all of you. So it will add to my peer learning. It will add to my people agility part also, because you all will have different questions, which will in turn help me learn this concept better. So these were the ways through which you can build in your learning agility overall. And a quick trivia: highly learning agile individuals are 18 times more identified as high potential employees, which is a huge number than the people who score lower in learning agility. Now, how can you measure learning agility for yourself? So 2 questions for each type of learning agility is what I'll be sharing with you all now. And the very first one, change agility. And I'm sure by now, maybe somewhere you have rated yourself in terms of where you lie in change, mental, people agility, and all these factors. But some more reflective questions. For change agility, Have you worked on a project which is not your area of expertise? Question one. And you need not answer this to me. It's a reflective question. It's an answer that you have to give for yourself. It's an answer that you have to have for yourself and work with your mentor on. So absolutely, these are indicative questions. You can further break them down. You can further thread them out and learn it for yourself. So first question, have you worked on a project which is not your area of expertise? And again, a personal story here. In one of the projects that I worked in my past, it was heavily data intensive, and I've been a person who though is good at maths, but I would I was not comfortable dealing with so much of numbers, and that too as my day job, working for 9 to 10 hours on the same kind of intense data crunching and creating very vivid reports, which used to go to highest of the C-suite people. So I had to be very diligent in the data maps that I created. I had to be very alert when I used to create those data maps. So it was not my area of expertise. I was good at it, but expertise maybe not. But I had no option. I had many other reasons to be at that particular project, and I learned immensely from it. And in fact, it added so much to my persona as a professional that today I can easily rate data crunching as one of my area of expertise. And that happened because I was not resistant to the change that happened to me. That happened because I really ensured that I learned from the change that was happening around. If you ever felt stuck at work, what was the reason for it? Was it the team environment? Was it the environment or the industry that you're working in, organization environment? It could be various reasons. Answer for yourself. Mental agility, do you always ask for a clear picture? So if you're given a task, and a lot of times, again, picking from my previous experience, we used to have problem statements like build a learning journey for personal development of managers. Now, that's a very, very vague statement, especially in large MNCs where there are so many people coming from so many educational backgrounds and so many different personalities. But are you someone who always requires that clear blueprint, or can you still work with a vague picture? That defines your mental agility. Do you find it difficult or easy to work? So if in case you do not get a clear blueprint or clear actionable steps for you, can you still work on it? That decides your mental agility. And a one cheat sheet over here, one very good tool to develop your mental agility is to get yourself hands-on onto design thinking concepts. A lot of organizations, I'm aware, conduct design thinking workshops. So if your organization conducts them for you, please get yourself acquainted with it. People agility, do you have counter arguments or counter question your peers? Are you someone who always agrees with what the team says, or do you also bring in differing POVs to people for them to possibly get a different perspective? Do you stand up for your views? Ask yourself. And very importantly, okay, today is a weekend, you're not at work today, but what did you learn from your peers today? Are you someone who, at the end of the day, can say that this was one thing that I learned from my peer today? If not daily, maybe at least on a frequent basis, do you bring in concepts that you learn from your peer regularly also? That's one question you can ask for yourself. Results agility, do you bifurcate your goals into short-term and long-term goals? Sometimes the results that we are seeking may not be immediate. And in those instances, are you proficient enough to break them into short-term goals? That's results agility. And how do you keep a track of your goals? Again, and this is a very, again, mapping down to one of my personal stories. One of my mentors had advised to me that if your goal is, say, for example, become the CEO of the company that you're working in, hypothetically, it obviously will not happen overnight. It will not happen in a quarter. It will not happen in a month's frame of time. But can you break it into short goals and make it successful for yourself? And how will you track it? Now, maybe you'll become a CEO after 10 years, but can you call yourself a failure until that point of time? Obviously not. You are consistently possibly working on it. So if you are indeed working on it, that in itself shows that you're succeeding. Self-awareness wouldn't give you more questions. How do you reflect upon your day daily? Just think through that. Maybe you write, maybe you just think, maybe you discuss it with someone close to you who you stay with. Different answers. Okay, so all said and done, you know about the concepts of learning agility and everything that learning agility has to offer. What is the industry relevance of it? How does it add to the industry goals? How can it make you a competent professional that organizations can vie for? And the next slide is self-explanatory. 94% of the learners claim that they will stay back at the company or if they invest in learning and development. And I'm sure the audience here has already read that detailed report by McKinsey, which speaks of great resignation. And while all of us in our respective workplaces are trying to find ways to address the great resignation, we have to look into as to how we can bring in those learning opportunities, how can we create a culture for our teams and for our workplaces to have them being open to be agile learners. So 94%, which is a huge number of people, say that if they are given chances to learn, if they're given chances to learn different things, different projects, different environments, they will stay back at the company that they're working in. Yes, and the very popular fact which I was stating, only 15% of the employees across industry, as per a report by Korn Ferry, have found to be agile learners. There's a lot of movement required over here, and absolutely agree that being an agile learner in all 5 types of learning agility is very idealistic to remember. But I think aside of that, could we still work on improvising that percentage, because it's very far from even being halfway onto it. So can we do something to better that percentage? And a very famous stat that I find intriguing is by 2030, 48 to 54% of the jobs, that's half the jobs in the US. And US is just one of the example of the countries where the survey was done, and hence the example of US here. About half the jobs will be automated. Now, I'm not saying that AI overpowers humans, but artificial intelligence has been there for some time. And even in the year 2003, we have heard about artificial intelligence. It may have been better adopted in organizations now, but it has existed in the industry for some time. So what distinguishes every organization from other is how they leverage all these emerging technologies. And with this leverage, it's the responsibility of all of us as individuals to upskill ourselves. I think you all already shared those answers, to stay relevant, to keep yourself on top of things, and ensure that if it's artificial intelligence or otherwise, you will stay relevant and you will somewhere be a valuable contributor to the workforce. And companies with agile learners have 25% more profit margins. Not very surprising. That's because people who are agile learners are very adaptive to changing projects, very adaptive to changing teams, because they have good people agility. They can work with different kinds of people. Very good again with change agility also, because even if they're posted in different geographies, they'll still do good. And last but not the least, they are promoted 2 times faster. So the very last slide of the event, a quick reflective activity. And again, you'll go back to your Mentimeter screens. And please allow me to share the other screen that I have. Yes. So different facets of learning agility, different types of learning agility, or maybe the ways you measure it, or maybe the ways to build it, whatever was your biggest learning of today's session. Agile lifelong learning. Okay, I do see in the chat box. Anything on the okay, types of learning agility. Nice. How to be agile? Yes. And different types of learning agility and how you can work on building each of them. Adapt, learn, implement. Absolutely. Very well worded. The approaches, yes. Okay. Thank you so much for your active participation. Oops, I clicked on the wrong button. Okay. Importance of agility. All righty. So I'm stopping my screen share and we'll get back to the questions that we have in the chat box.
Thank you, Achala. It was been really interesting. Yes, uh, as you can see, the first question from RC Goel. I noticed that agility and practicing it is actually intrinsic with all of us while socializing in family and friends. But then what happened to us when we enter our work environment? And the reason that we lack agility in our professional activity. What do you say?
Very, very, I just totally love this question for the first reason that it shows that you already are self-aware and you've done that reflective exercise, and that's very true. I agree with that. We possibly have showcased it even in our colleges, when we were studying maybe, but what happens at workplaces? And to that, I would give a one-folded answer. Possibly it's the change agility that we may want to work on in this case, and I'll tell you how. Sometimes, like I was saying previously, sometimes when we have been in the same kind of industry for some time, or if we have been working with the same people of the project, your team, the same team, or the same bosses or same organizations, in those cases, it's a very human tendency. It's not something personal or individual. It's a human tendency to get very comfortable with the kind of people that you work with. If you really love the people around you and the work that you are doing, you will get comfortable with it. Change agility is something, and to answer your question, this has to be a proactive effort. You have to willingly ask at your workplaces and with your managers for different kinds of work, different projects, maybe after a certain amount of time, of course, to ensure that you always have that muscle developed in you to stay agile. So it's more of a proactive effort, easier said than done, but it starts with one step at a time. Be proactive in asking for changes of environment or projects or the people at your workplaces.
Thank you, Achala. Uh, the next question is from Nimesh. He asks, what do you think could be the motivation to embrace the unfamiliar? As I
Yeah.
think it is difficult to bring without individual interest.
Very good question again, and again shows the amount of self-awareness that's brought in here. Yes, and especially in turbulent situations, one needs to find an individual interest, absolutely. And in fact, I'll map down to the same story which I was sharing when I was posted in a village. The individual interest that I had over there was learning. The amount of learning I was having from the work that I was doing was unmatched. In fact, till date, I would rate it as one of the best professional stints that I've ever had. There is an individual interest always, of course, allowed, and it's fair to have it as long as it is somewhere in alignment with your long-term goal. That's one pointer you may want to reflect upon. For me, at that point of time, it was very much in alignment with my long-term goal. It taught me good stakeholder management. The work that I was doing, it gave me skills which were very relevant to the goal that I had for myself professionally. So very apt to have individual interest, especially if you're in a situation where there is less that you're liking or finding something to be grateful about, as long as it is aligned with your long-term goals and long-term learning.
Very true. Yeah, there are now a lot of questions coming. Amar asks, how can we
Yeah.
become agile learners?
Yes, and all the pointers that I shared, Amar, on how to build in learning agility. I believe there were 3-4 pointers that were shared, and for the benefit of everyone, I'll just list them out once again for the sake of everyone. So one is embracing the unfamiliar, of course, embracing any unfamiliar territory that you are being in. Very, very small example. This is the first time I'm delivering a session on GoToMeeting. And when the organizers told me that it's a very small example, but still, when they told me that it's happening on GoToMeeting, I had to actually figure out, even if that was a small learning curve, it was still a learning curve for me, and I absolutely gladly embraced it, and I'm enjoying this platform absolutely and would love to leverage it. So being open to embracing the unfamiliar, and the next aspect is having a mentor and seeking feedback, because that will help you eradicate the blind spots that you have. And the third one being building self-awareness, trying to build self-awareness through various tools that I had already shared. The fourth one being building emotional intelligence. A lot of organizations invest in training programs on emotional intelligence, and also there are LinkedIn learning courses if you wish to explore them. And in turn, also peer learning. How open are you to learning from others? And in fact, the very fact that all of y'all have logged in into this session and all the other sessions on a weekend shows that y'all are open to learning already. So these are some quick steps which I had shared for being agile learner.
Very true. And another this interesting question is, how can we bring agility in work-life balance?
Uh, I would first like to, I think, if you don't mind, Prashant. So I think Nimesh has asked, how will we become agile then? Because it maps down to the previous question. To answer that, Nimesh, pivoting. So when I speak of individual interest, we are just pivoting on that. We are not actually making that the theme of your life. You're pivoting onto that. I was still in that horrendous village where I was posted. I was still dealing with the kind of challenges that it brought to. I was still dealing with the crisis of not having anyone to reach out to. But I pivoted on my individual interest of learning from that place. So the theme of my life, 90% of it is adapting to that place, adapting to different situation, adapting to that different culture. And I also learned the language of that place. I'm fluent in that language today. I interact with that language with people at my workplace also whenever there are people from that language. So that did make me very agile and very able. I just pivoted on my individual interest. Yes. So on the work-life balance question, how can we bring agility in work-life balance? Uh, yes, agree so much, Sendil, that when we are doing all of plethora of tasks and also trying to be learning agile learners, or maybe better and emotional intelligence and all that, work-life balance can take a hit. But I think attempting for that work-life balance in itself is agility. Attempting to bring in that balance in your life amidst whatever you have, and that the reason that you've asked that question itself shows that you have that inclination towards agility, and to learn how to do it. Right now, maybe your life does not have work-life balance for any of us, but if all of us can think of bringing that in, we are still being agile learners, because we are still trying to balances off. Bring in agility in work-life balance by being open to the change schedules. Organizations have started calling us to workplaces, being open to that change, embracing it. It may impact a bit of your work-life balance because you're used to working from home, but being open to it, accepting that change will bring in that work-life balance. Uh, I'll move to question from Ravi Teja, if that's fine, because the previous people have asked the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I see a lot
Yeah,
of
we can.
teams have
Um,
little. The last question, is it? Okay. Um,
yeah.
Indifferent attitude to organizational learning tools, and see it more of a break from regular work or namesake completions. And this is a barrier to learning agility as well. Any practical tips to help improve their thinking? Uh, Again, very, very relevant. And this is a very practical example, different tools being in, and different God forbid, if we have switched multiple organizations in a very short span of time, different organizations use different tools, different ways of addressing projects and processes. There could be resistance to that. And the first step towards that is a very famous quote, but very relevant here: being Rome in Roman. That's one thing you may want to tell your team. If you're in Rome, you can absolutely be an Indian. Nobody's stopping you from being an Indian, but it's better if you're a Roman. And this is just an example of Roman. It applies to any culture or any company, organizational culture for that matter. If you try to assimilate yourself into the processes and the people around, it will be more effective. That's one thing you may want to tell people. And another aspect is the stats that I was earlier sharing also. People who are more agile, and in fact, as a team lead, you would have yourself realized this also. People who do not have that resistance, people who show that openness to learn different things, to adapt to different things, they seem to have they seem to come across as high potential individuals 18 times by 18 times. So with resistance to new tools or new processes or new methodologies, nobody's losing, it's but them. Rather, you are a team lead who's still trying to be agile and trying to adopt ways to make them understand, but possibly the team in itself is losing out by not opening their minds to different tools and technologies. This is going to be the norm. Today there is Zoom, tomorrow it will not be. They have to get accustomed themselves to different kinds of changing times, and that's what change agility and people agility stands for.
Very true. Thanks a lot, Achal. I think there are a lot of questions still pending, but anyway, due to time constraint, we may not be able to take. But
Sure.
anyway, before we quit, I have one small question. If you can just quickly answer that, because
Sure.
how this particular pandemic situation or this thing, how it has changed, what steps it has been changing the L&D team to make the employees toward getting towards the learning agility part. What extra steps are taken, or how this online learning is impacting? Any quick?
Yes. Well, very great point, Prashant. And in fact, I should have covered in my session also. Uh, and I will tie it back to some of the questions that have come in here also. As L&D, all we knew was somewhere to have interventions where we would facilitate in person. You're actually able to see people who's zoned out, who's not zoned out, who's concentrating, have those interactions, questions, and all that in person. But with pandemic, everything moved virtually. We all had to quickly move online. LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, Upgrade, whatever possible options that are there. We had to first acquaint ourselves also of all these tools and the features that each of them had as well. So very rightly, like you said, we have a lot of organizations have moved into the digitization aspect. We have all made all our learning available on the go. So learning on the go. It may be digitized, may not be digitized, but learning on the go. Can I even access or book, like you all did it for your conference? If I want to attend the conference, can I quickly register on that link? It was always embedded in your social media post. So that's learning on the go. Nobody has time to inquire and come back and register. It has to be on the go. So learning on the go has been the change.
Absolutely. And I think people who have been attending has shown the real learning agility
Yeah,
by being on the weekend. Thanks a lot, Ajay.
absolutely.
Thanks for your uh, insightful session. With this, we come to the end of the second session of the day.